Woohoo! Build Out Productions, Energize. We're back, Heidi.
Good morning.
Good
How,
morning. Do you have a
how
good
was your
Christmas?
Christmas, Mike?
How was yours? I asked first.
It was wonderful. It
Yeah?
was a very low key one. A lot of good food, and it was awesome. Look, we got
Fabulous.
some people on already. Good morning, Juan, CM,
Woohoo! Hey,
Raymond.
everyone. How you doing? We're gonna talk about when to ask for help this morning.
I think it's comical. I saw that Lisa was on. Good morning, Lisa. So we have two people now that have LinkedIn users as their titles.
Oh,
So
this
be
can be
careful there.
confusing.
Yes.
Uh-oh.
CM has another person as
Wow.
titled LinkedIn user. But yes, we're going to talk about how and when to ask for help.
That's right. That's right. Well, let's jump right in, Heidi. So, in the professional environment, can you think of an example of when you felt maybe overwhelmed, you needed help, you didn't know how to overcome something? And if so, how did you handle that?
Well, I could think of quite a few times that I could have asked for help. Sometimes that I have actually asked for help, but I think sometimes where I get stuck is strategizing. So I think a lot of people or a lot of professionals don't realize the difference between business development and sales.
Hmm.
And sometimes I get stuck in between those two, and it would, especially working from home, it would be nice to have someone to bounce. I would
Right.
say if I was working in an office, I would bounce, random ideas off of someone else. But when you're working remotely, you don't really have that privilege. You actually have to text or call. And sometimes you can feel like an interruption to someone else's day.
Sure. Sure.
So
Even though if you were in the office and you just kind of popped your head into your neighbor's office and said, "Hey, I got, quick," that's maybe more of an interruption than the text or email type thing. So
correct,
just got to consider that.
correct. You
Yeah,
know,
I think high performing people struggle with asking for help. I think that folks that are highly motivated, very proud, and in that ego, right? We talked about ego last week. They have a tough time going to a peer or a manager and going, "Hey, I need some help," and that can be a real problem.
what do you think some of the identifiers are that prevent us from asking for help or overwhelm us? You
Uh,
know,
Again, I think it comes down to the environment that we're in. Okay. It's a combination of things, right? So, the environment we're in, is it a safe environment to ask for help? Because some settings professionally are not. And if you go and ask for help, perhaps you'll get publicly ridiculed, or okay, I'm gonna take that down. We're gonna, that's points docked on your performance review. Those kinds of things.
it's crazy that there's still bosses out there that publicly ridicule.
Yeah.
It seems so 80s, but there are, I mean, I would say sometimes it's more standard that the bosses are
If
publicly, quote unquote, ridicule.
if we're gonna do 80s, we got to bring the clothes back. But actually, we were talking about over the holiday bringing back disco.
Yes, we were, weren't we?
Yeah, yeah. So you heard it here. If disco comes back, it's from Energized Build Out Productions, and Heidi and Mike have brought it back. Want to see hands? How many people want to see disco brought back? No, but
I think that a lot of us are more self-reliant these days. And so we're not, no matter how safe of an environment our higher ups make, we're so self-reliant, especially working from home. We're not really Raymond's in for the disco. We're not really
Sweet.
um, you know, it's not easy for us to ask for help. It's not convenient for us to ask for help. And I think not wanting to appear weak gets in the way as well. So when it's your own issue, how do you work on that? Is a sign. I'm a little slow on showing some of the comments.
Yeah, yeah,
Disco is the sign of a coming disaster.
yeah.
I tend to agree with that. I tend to agree with that.
That's probably CM.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey,
CM
CM.
or Lisa. But, what do we do when it's our own self in the way of asking for help?
Yeah. Well, and that's often the case. Again, I think that high performers have both a special gift in that they're very driven. They have high expectations of themselves. You don't have to go wind them up every day because they're ready to go. However, one of the downfalls of being a high performer is that we're oftentimes very proud, and again that ego word comes in, and we expect that we should just be able to do it. Okay, and that's something that we got to kind of work around, because if you get into deep water, and I've seen high performers do this before, where they'll get into a little trouble, and then a week will go by, and that little trouble becomes more trouble, and the problem becomes bigger and bigger as the weeks go by. And if you wanted to say, hey, look, if you just would have asked for help back here, we could have avoided a lot of this. So I think that you got to be self-aware enough to go, okay, am I not asking for help because I'm too proud?
Absolutely. That I agree. I think, like Raymond says, it appears that asking for help is not part of our nature. Oh, hi, Sam, by the way. Sam Navarro's on. I agree. And
Sam?
I think what you said and what Raymond just said, it isn't part of our nature. And I think also our ego can get involved and think that no one else can help us. But it's important to consider the goal. So, whatever task you're working on that you may need help with, if you're working on a timeline and if you're keeping those things in mind and you truly do need help, I think eventually you're going to find a way to ask, because you don't want to, not be able to produce before the timeline, or you want to keep the agenda at hand. One of the things I've read preparing for today, because I did have to prepare because I am terrible at asking for help.
This is not scripted,
Yes,
folks. This
no.
is not scripted. We don't compare notes. There's no talking point. It's not like your evening news where we have a teleprompter and we just kind of read stuff. We completely go in cold. Heidi and I have no preparation together.
Yes. And it's interesting that we're getting to know each other and our strengths and weaknesses. So you kind of can assume, where we're good at and where we're not. But one of the things that I read that which was interesting is you hear the SMART acronym a lot, and in a lot of professional terms. And there was a SMART acronym for asking for help.
Okay.
So which you want to is specific. Asking for something specific triggers people's memories, what they know and who they know. So you're going to get a more productive answer. Meaningful. Include why you're making this request.
Mm-hmm.
Action. Ask for something to be done rather than restating your goal or the why of your request. So instead of, and that gets a lot of times when someone asks me for help, I notice that there's a lot of analyzing and troubleshooting even before we get down to what is the goal? What is your question?
Right. Right.
Being realistic, encouraging people to make stretch requests, but they need to be within the realm of possibility, which I was a little confused as to what that meant. And then time, mentioning a specific deadline. So that's, I think, very insightful. When people ask for help, they say no rush or no problem. But the truth is, get to it when you can. But the truth is, they've waited until most of the time, they've waited until the last minute, and they're
Right.
just being gracious by allowing you time to answer.
Right. I, I think it comes down to knowing when you have a true roadblock and you're not making progress. I think that's what it would, for me, if I'm not able to make any progress, then I might need to ask for some help. And I don't always have to ask a somebody above me. I ask my peers, right? That's something that we should all do, and go, hey, here's where I am, here's where I'm struggling, what do you think? Right. So I think for me, if you were to ask me, Mike, when should I ask for help, I would say when you can no longer make productive progress on a given task.
Very, very good point. I think that's probably the number one point. Now, Raymond or CM, I think it was, before we go into John's comment, CM says, I know cathodic protection, but sales is new. It's hard to appear weak when you're given a new position. And I've been the last few years in the flip side of him, where I know sales and marketing extremely well. But I didn't know corrosion and cathodic protection. That
Right.
was probably the hardest to start.
Right.
That took
Right.
me about a year before I grasped the basics. But so it is hard to, when I've taken classes, and for someone like CM, I would think that his knowledge is sales. So to answer CM specifically, s- I would feel like CM doesn't need so much as to strengthen his sales technique, but be more confident in his knowledge. Oh, that was Lisa. Okay.
Lisa.
Oh, CM. I was surprised CM went all vulnerable there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So for Lisa,
Assumptions, they'll get you every time.
every time. Yes, yes. So for Lisa, I am the exact opposite of you, Lisa. But I would think that your knowledge, especially in our industry, I got to say, your knowledge is your sales technique. So when you're falling short, just like our first topic a few weeks ago, fake it until you make it, you just strengthen your knowledge, and lightly focus on your confidence in that knowledge. And I think sales will naturally come through. Um, what do you think?
Oh, that's an interesting one. Yeah, so I think that in with respect to sales, it's all about being yourself, and folks can very quickly pick up on whether you're being genuine or not. And so, should you fake competency to make a sale? Absolutely not.
I agree.
Absolutely, because the folks are very, very informed today, and they will quickly figure out, oh, wait a minute, something's not adding up here. This person doesn't claim to know or have the expertise or whatever that they're representing. And once you get found out and you have misrepresented yourself, you're done. Your credibility is shot. So I think that always say, hey, I'm new to this. I'm learning too. And and then engage from there. So I think that you always have to be honest.
I agree. I think that number one, they're also, especially in our industry, very gracious with the answers. So I've been in the corrosion and oil and gas industry for a few years, and there were a lot of things that I did not know. And it brings up a good point of asking for help allows others to share their talents and gifts. And a lot of
Right.
times when I would go into my sales appointments, there were a lot of gracious people in the corrosion industry that did take the time. Now, I definitely knew the products, but how it fit and how it saved time in their position, I wasn't sure so much. So I had a couple of people that really helped me in the first 6 months, customers, that I'll never forget. I mean, I'm thinking of their names right off the top of my head, and, that helped me. One was in field. I mean, sometimes I would go to their work trailer and work for a
Right.
couple hours, and
Right.
I was allowed to see, a million different things that didn't even entail, the products. So, people are really gracious. You just have to be authentic and yourself and ask for help. And I would think that Lisa, um, probably could do the same. I'm
Yeah.
sure,
Yeah.
sales is so competitive though, so I could see.
Right. But everyone at some point is a beginner.
Mhm.
And that's important to kind of remember. I'm a lifelong martial artist, and I think that if one of the things that real martial artists and folks that participate in martial arts understand is that the hardest thing for somebody that achieves competency in a certain art is to start over in another one where they're a beginner. And again, everyone starts at the same starting line at some point. Now, the difference is I started it before the next person. So, does that mean I'm better or special? Or no, I just started sooner. So, the same thing with sales, in that it's okay to be a beginner. And I think that we should own that and be honest with our peers, our prospective customers. They respect that. And ultimately, today, who do we like to buy from? Folks that we have good relationships with, folks that we think that we can trust. And if somebody's humble enough to go, hey, I'm new to this space, I'm learning it. Please bear with me. I may not know the answer to every question, but I sure will try to find out. Boy, those are the types of folks that we want to work with, right?
Absolutely. For sure.
Yeah.
I agree. And it's again, by allowing others to, and there's in sales especially, there's always someone that may not have time for it, but that's someone that probably won't be a good customer, anyway. So, you brought up something early on, is as a leader providing a safe environment. And John
Mhm.
had said, as a leader, you should teach your team to ask for help so they don't spend a lot of time on a project. When someone could help you get back on track, some people don't want to admit they need help. Now, how do you recognize when someone's asking for help or passing the buck?
Yeah. Well, and that's a great question, because today we see a lot of this where someone takes it as far as they are willing to take it, and then they bring it to back to the team supervisor or manager and say, here you go, I'm done, I can't take this any farther. Right. And that's a really big problem too. And I always use the movie of Apollo 13, and based on historical fact, obviously, as an example of, be the folks at NASA that were working on helping bring the crew from Apollo 13 back to Earth. And if they would have said, well, that's too hard, we're done, sorry, it can't be done. Yeah, no, we have to be problem solving, and we have to overcome perceived barriers, right? And I think that that's something that is starting to be lost in our workforce today. With We have so many resources at our fingertips.
Yes,
Google,
really.
YouTube. You can literally learn almost anything off of YouTube, right? And you go, okay, have you exhausted all of the available resources? Yes or no? Because if you haven't spent any time trying to problem solve, on your own, then you haven't,
Yeah.
right? So folks need to understand that taking a roadblock and dumping it on your supervisor manager's desk and going, hey, I can't, that's not high performing, and it's certainly not high caliber. Managers want the people that can figure out something that most folks are going to go, that looks hard. I'm going to be, I'm back away from. So asking for help is a double-edged sword, right? And what we're not saying is, hey, transfer your problems to others, because that's not going to get you very far in your career.
I agree. Yeah, I think there's what I was thinking when you were mentioning that is there's definitely ways to tell when someone is passing the buck, and it can become excessive. And that's probably when you have a private conversation at that point. MJ brought up some very key points. I
Hey,
found,
MJ.
hi, MJ, strategic questions can get you the help you need. So, based off of what I read off earlier on the SMART questions, she is absolutely correct. So, a lot of times people don't put too many thoughts because they're so uncomfortable with asking for help. So, they don't put in a lot of thoughts into how to ask, when to ask, the things to ask, and actually strategizing prior to taking that to someone else can, number one, be more productive, but also shows you have a little bit of respect for the situation. So
Definitely, definitely. And I think that again, and it's not one person. It's not the person that is struggling. It's not it is the entire team. And I'm big on, what's the environment like? Is the environment a safe environment? Is the environment overly competitive? Because certainly in the example of sales, right? You definitely have some competitive personalities, and that can be an issue in the way that the scorekeeping is done. Certainly. So, what's the environment like, and is the environment conducive to getting the most out of a team? And I always say that, be careful with your goals and metrics and how you measure progress, because they can have very unintended consequences, where you might have teammates that are that they're not sabotaging, but they're certainly not helping their other teammates. And what are we here to accomplish, right? And let's make sure that we're managing in a way that facilitates those objectives comprehensively, and not just unintentionally sabotaging yourself because you've set up these metrics where someone's not going to help their peer.
yes, yes. I'd like to ask John. He has been on a few times last few weeks with his comments, and it seems like he keeps also a safe environment in mind when creating ways to help subordinates or peers. And I wonder what he thinks, if he's still on how to create a safe environment. What are some of the characteristics of a safe environment? Um,
We got to get set up to where we can take calls, like, have callers call in. Long time listener,
well,
first time caller, love the show. I mean, we got to get set
I'm
up.
going to provide a link and have
Yeah, yeah,
people jump
yeah.
in out, because that's the real productive part of it, is all of us sharing our thoughts and
Absolutely. I'm sure Jim will have it figured out by next week on how to do it. Jim is great. Hey, Jim. For those of you that don't know, Jim behind the scenes is making all the magic happening. He's the producer of the show, and he does an excellent job.
yes, that's, you can find him on LinkedIn as James Kunkel if you don't know him, but he always provides his expertise in such a way that you wouldn't know he was producing, but he is. He is
He
the
is the magic man. See that? We're bringing the 70s back. That was a 70s song, right?
Raymond. Yes, Raymond, we're going to have you on. I'm sending out, when we figure out the link concept, I'm going to send it out to Raymond to have him on for a few minutes with his comments. Now,
Well,
Raymond is an expertise in safety. So by the definition, safe digging. But I'm sure that he knows a few ways of how to create a safe environment in the office as well. So share your comments, Raymond, on what you feel some of the characteristics are
And
um, in an
but
environment that's conducive to asking for help or sharing your help or, sharing with others.
and Heidi, we want the audience comments. We want the comments. So don't be shy about keying in a comment, and don't ever feel like, oh, you're hijacking or we don't have, again, this is a live program and we don't have a written script. So you're
Yeah,
part of the show too.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Well, so what about if you're the person that's being asked for help, Heidi? How do you handle that? How do you receive that?
I personally, without going off of something by the book, I am being nice. Yes, yes, let's show
You
that.
can be a little intimidating. We all know.
Um, okay. I personally am usually very quick to help. I'm very gracious. When it gets repetitive, I'm also, and I have to admit it's a fault, I'm also very quick to show my impatience. So but I mean, I feel like the repetitive if it goes on for months, or if I know that there's a way. So I take it two ways. I'm usually overcompensating and very gracious, or I'm on the opposite side of the spectrum where I just very kindly reiterate or provide a link or say, it's in this software or answer the question where they still have to go and do the work. What I should do, and I recognize that through a lot of things that I read or I've learned, I shouldn't be so quick to respond. But that is a strength of mine, and it's hard for the customers, and it's hard to balance that with peers. I love to respond right away. I love to help people um, by responding in a quick manner because not a
Right.
lot of people do
Right.
that anymore. So I think when someone's repetitively asking for help or excessively, I think slowing down on the response time might be a good way to tell or kind of decipher if they're passing the buck.
Right. Well, and that's a tough one. Everyone's really busy, and that's kind of a given. In that you have to understand when you're asking a person for help, they are probably up to their eyeballs in other issues. And so, expecting them to stop everything and be able to effectively help you immediately maybe isn't realistic.
Right.
But here's kind of what I want to hear if I ask for help. Hey, Mike, I'm gonna get with you. Understand that you need, some assistance and need some support. I'm in the middle of something, but I will get with you at this time. And in that way, you've responded, right? Because the worst thing that someone can do is is be asked for help and then not respond,
Yeah.
because then you're not going to get asked again, right? And remember, here's the thing about teamwork is the success of your individual team members and you are all connected if you're the manager. And if they aren't successful, you aren't successful. And
Absolutely.
so I always say that your number one priority should be that team. And if it's not, you're only going to be so effective as a team.
Yeah.
But when you're prioritizing your team and going, hey, understand you got a problem, let me get with you at this time, and you're helping them progress, then you're setting yourself up and the team up for success. So again, it is it's kind of like one of those critters that's in the sea, maybe like a jellyfish or something, where they have a bunch of individual cells, but they're all moving towards a common goal. Well, that's essentially what the professional team is. And we all have to remember that for me to be successful, every member of my team has to be successful.
Yes. And it's important to remember that even if you're working remote or on your own, you're still part of a team. Raymond says, I know that my day of being lazy will come. So it's easy for me to help the lazy person today. That's very kind of you, Raymond. Yes, I agree. And if anybody throws in a little humor, I am a-okay with helping.
Oh yeah, or sarcasm, although
Yes,
it's hard to tell sometimes.
yes. For sure. John said he answered our question earlier about the safety of the environment. And he says it's all about the relationship. If you establish a good one, people will feel safe to ask for help, knowing that you will not think they are not smart. And I
Right,
think that is key in providing a safe environment is there's no judgment on questions, especially, the first 3 times they're asked. There's no judgment, and it's a great way to bond over instead of judging over, analyzing like how you came about to this question or problem solving. That's a great way
right,
to bond is problem solving with your peer, subordinate, or manager.
right. Well, and I love that phrase, there's no judgment. I think that's an excellent way to put it, is that you're not being judged. And when you're asking for help, especially in a team of high performers, and you're going, "Hey, I need help." You're feeling like, okay, I'm being judged, right? And that's an issue right there, and that might prevent me from asking for help. So
Yeah.
if someone's got the courage to ask for help and they truly need it, we're not talking about the person that just goes, well, this is too hard, so I'm not going to try. We're not talking about that scenario.
We'll send them to Raymond.
We'll send them to Raymond. And in Jordan Peterson talks a lot about having a nobler aim, and I love that. Is what is the aim? What is the objective? What is the team marching towards? Because that's what's important. It's not that somebody needed help or somebody's not strong in a certain area, because again, as I've said before, everyone brings strengths and weaknesses to the
Yeah.
table, and it's how you kind of mesh those together to complement each other is how you build a high performing team.
Yeah.
And if you are one of those folks that is threatened by having smart, very capable people work with you, then you're in trouble. You're in big trouble. You
Yeah.
need to set that aside and go, you know what? I need people that are smarter than me, people that are better at things than me on my team, because that's how you build a high performing, high functioning unit.
And I think as a leader, it's important to, even for myself, to be prepared for questions. A lot of times that I feel I could have answered questions better, it was because I wasn't prepared in my own right, whether to answer those questions, whether I didn't schedule my day enough, my day was packed on its own. But, be prepared for questions as a leader or not so much as a peer, because your peer is going to understand, but definitely as a leader, be more prepared and save more time in your schedule for questions, I
Well,
think is important.
that's an interesting one, and time is one of the it is the most valuable thing we have. It with period dot time is the most valuable thing we have, and it's amazing how much of it we waste, not only in our personal lives but professionally. And you look at all the meetings and all the things that we do that are not value add, and you can't ever get that time back.
Yeah.
So what I encourage folks to do is think about how you are spending your time. Is it an effective use of your time? Because working 60 hours doesn't impress me if you're not very productive in that 60 hours, right? I would rather have somebody work 40 hours and give it their all between 8 and 5 and be more productive than the person that works 60. So time is really, really, you can't emphasize it enough how valuable it is. And as someone that needs help, if you don't ask for help, what starts happening immediately? You hit a roadblock. You're not asking for help. Time is going by, and those hours turn into days, and the days turn into weeks. So you have to, at that point, once again, I say once you are no longer being productive with the task at hand, you need to raise your hand and go, hey, I need help, because
Yeah.
I know that supervisors and managers, one thing that they get really frustrated with is you go, well, why didn't you ask me weeks ago? Right. Um, you gotta speak up. You gotta be brave enough to speak up and go, hey, I can't make any more progress. I'm starting to waste time. So I need to get help.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's important for a leader to set aside time to spend with that individual uh, and not be so responsive, like we mentioned earlier, and actually just address them and say, we will, get to this later today or in the morning. But at a time that you can set aside time to answer, solve the problem. So, yeah, very
And I think that there's nothing wrong with blocking out chunks of time if you are a manager, supervisor, or if you are an individual contributor. Again, if you are willing to give up yourself to other distractions, needs, the world will only take, and you will look up and go, I didn't get any of my work done this week.
right.
So I think, Heidi, that's really insightful, is make sure that we are all giving ourselves the focus time that we need to get our tasks done. And focus time does not mean uh, chatting on Messenger and answering questions and answering emails and texts and those kinds of things. And I think that's something that we are losing in our professional environment, is that dedicated focus
Yeah.
time, because we have become so accustomed to, oh, I need this answer immediately. I'm going to go to my employee and I'm going to pull this answer. Well, I've also tasked that employee with doing some important tasks. And every time I get interrupted, I have to come back and go, okay, where was I? What was I doing? And so you're losing that efficiency. And so again, companies are around to make money. How do we make money? Well, we have to be mindful of how we spend our time. We have to be efficient. So I think that's great insight.
Yeah. Why, thank you. So, what any other contributions we could add to our morning before we are done with our Tuesday Energize? What do you
Well,
what,
what are you doing for New Year's, Heidi?
I
You having
actually
I heard you were having a disco party.
no. No, 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 no. I'll be pretty low key. I may have dinner with my brother and sister-in-law. What are your plans?
I have discovered that Winnie, my pup, hates fireworks.
Oh yeah.
And so she thinks she's got to bark at every single firework that goes off. So I'm sure it'll be a late evening for me.
Oh yeah, I remember my dog Kiki is now 9, but I remember her early years when I discovered that she did not like
Oh yeah.
fireworks. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So Heidi, what are we talking about next week? I think we have professional communications next for next week on Tuesday. That should be another fun one too.
It's fun. The fun part is discovering everyone's answers to, because I am a star high performing employee, but all of these things I definitely need MJ says, Mike, I heard you're wearing the white John Travolta.
Maybe I am. Maybe I am. You
I
know,
think
and if the audience really demands it, maybe I can wear a disco outfit, sometime to energize. Maybe show some moves.
yeah, maybe we'll just go live on New Year's Eve.
Maybe.
Go on, yeah. Best of creating an open environment of mutual help between peers. Open an extraordinary learning and growing experience. Extraordinary is right on. I agree. So next week, professional communications. Yes. So it will be fun. It will, I look forward to it as I learn something new every week from you, Mike, and
Oh, and
our,
vice versa. And we learn from our audience. So I would say, to summarize, when to ask for help. Well, when you're not making progress, that's kind of the thing. But make sure that you have tried to solve that puzzle before you throw your hands up and you've exhausted all your resources, internet, asking peers, etc. And then go, hey, I'm at a stopping point. I need help. And I think that's really important. And one thing that we didn't even touch on really, Heidi, is because that was more task oriented, but what about when you're stressed? What about when you're overwhelmed? And is that a different scenario for asking for help?
well, I think that's a very common scenario. So you're right. That's a great point to bring up. Are you speaking of a manager or a peer?
All the above. All
Yeah,
the
like,
above. Yeah, I'm feeling stressed. I'm feeling overwhelmed, and it's not that I can't do my work. It's just I feel really overwhelmed.
yeah.
How do you handle that? Do you ask, or are you too proud to ask for help?
Those are both, I think, extremely important that you threw in here right at the end, Mike.
Yeah.
Um,
We can.
I think that stress can add to it. Absolutely. It's a trigger. I know recently when I had my own wanting or needing to ask for help and had it, stress can cause a myriad of different reactions. And that's important to remember when you're working with others is I think Lisa had mentioned earlier, put yourself in someone else's shoes and be empathetic because at work, you never know what that person is truly going through in personal stress, and so that's that's important to remember that, but that can certainly contribute to that environment. And that's why keeping a safe environment as a leader is very important.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I think that everyone, no matter what, goes through a time in their life, whether it's personally or professionally, where they need someone's help, and that's okay. That is okay. Ask for help. If you're at a point where things are overwhelming to you, um, find someone that's encouraging, supportive, and don't go to that person that's the negative person that's like, yeah, well, that boy, good luck with that. Find someone that's in your life that is uplifting, positive, encouraging, and can help you through that. That's my thought.
thank you for that. Yeah. As you see, when I get stressed, I pause or panic. So I'm glad that I appreciate that. Well,
It's a live broadcast, Heidi.
yeah.
It's all good. Well, folks, wishing you all a happy and healthy new year. And we will see you back here next week at the same time, right, Heidi?
Absolutely.
Energize with us. Spread the
Yes.
word, tell your friends if you like it. Let's get more folks involved in the community. For our loyal listeners, viewers, you're great. We love you all. See you back here next week.
Yeah, for sure. Happy New Year, guys.
Happy New Year.
Many blessings and prosperity.